Yes, I'm Wolfram Stumpf. I'm from Germany, and 40 years ago we decided to come to Ireland. We bought a little farm here and tried to be self-sufficient, and now we are retired, living in the same place. We had been teachers in Germany. We tried to combine painting and art together with farming. That was quite difficult.
Okay.
So there were so many things. We bought a little Jersey cow that I milked every morning. And then we had a big vegetable garden, tried to grow things you couldn't get in a shop here.
I'm Ulla Stumpf, his wife, and when we came here, we had just bought this little farm, and it was completely derelict and run down. The roofs that you see now were all round and full of holes, so the wood underneath them was rotten, so we had to remove it all before we could start. And then we couldn't move into this house, it was so moldy. We renovated the little chalet first and lived in this one for half a year before we could move in here. And when Wolfram started farming, we mostly started with a cow because we had all this grass and didn't know what to do with it. But then we got the Jersey cow because we wanted butter. In Ireland they only had salted butter, and we wanted sour cream butter. And we then made butter every day, and cheese and yogurt and things that you couldn't get in that quality here. So when Wolfram had his painting classes, that was in summer mostly, each of the students was living in one of the neighbors' bed and breakfasts and came to us for painting. Often when he was painting with them, the bees swarmed. But luckily I was a teacher in Germany as well, and I had taught art as well. So then I went in and went on with the lesson, and he looked after the bees. I didn't dare to climb ladders and catch them. So, yeah, that was...
And did you teach as well?
In Germany, yes, I did.
And here, did you teach?
It took ages because at the time when we came, Ireland was extremely poor, and there was an enormous amount of jobless people, jobless teachers as well. So I didn't want to take their jobs. But when I found out that the German teachers mostly had no German, I went to the schools and said I could teach German. And I got a job, subbing here, subbing there, but not really a proper job, until later on I got a job in Letterkenny, LYIT, Institute of Technology, teach German. And that was lovely. It was really lovely. The students were all so well behaved and not very talented though, but still it was a joy to teach them, and you could notice that they learned something. And that is a joy for a teacher. We went to the embassies and inquired about, is it possible to go to, say, Canada or Australia or to New Zealand? But in the end we found out that Australia and New Zealand was too far away from our families. They wept their eyes out, especially Wolfram's family. And Canada, they had just found uranium there, and we went from Germany. We wanted to disappear from Germany because of the nuclear power plants, and uranium was a no sign for us. So Canada was not. France was full of nuclear power plants already. England was full of industry, and we didn't want to be in a country like that, although England would be easy because of the language. France would have been my favorite country, but nuclear power plants. So then I said to Wolfram one day, why don't we go to Ireland? We try. He said, you're slightly crazy. Cool summers and mild winters, who wants that? And no tree in Ireland, flat and green. And no. I said, yes, we can go and try and see, because I read a book. And they kissed under a tree, so there must be one tree. They swam in the sea, and it couldn't be that cold. Let's go and try. And we went and came to Ireland for the first time. Now, we only knew about Ireland, about the Dubliners, and they were always drunk, and I didn't want a country where people were always drunk. So we went to Ireland in Easter time, Easter holidays, 1980. And it was beautiful. The air was so clean and the rain was so clean. But the rain, we stood every day in a pub with our backs to the fireplace and steamed. It was so wet. But anyway, the prices of the farms were right, or doable for us. And the people were so relaxed and friendly. And we always wanted to plant trees. We did even plant trees in Germany already. But the main reason we came was not because we wanted to plant trees. The main reason was we wanted to escape from Germany and all the nuclear power plants. And we were lucky to find this place where we could then later
Yeah, and
on.
we had a nuclear power plant just beside our place in Germany. So it was not finished, but we could see it starting to build. And so that made our decision to come to Ireland much easier.
Yeah. Before we came here, we had 2 full years of fighting against the nuclear power plants that they were going to build beside our house. 2 full years that we spent
Yes, there were
planning
massive
actions.
demonstrations.
Planning actions.
Like 100,000 people coming to the place and protesting against that power plant.
And we had a lot of years to plan and to think about where to go. And that was not difficult to decide and find a place.
It's a big decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, we had some money from selling the house and selling the boat, so that we could survive for a few years without earning. But of course, we looked for jobs right away. In the meantime, it was a year later that we came again, and I had made a list of people who lived in Germany, Germans who lived in Ireland in the meantime, and who could tell us what things would cost, say telephone. There was no telephone at the time, or health insurance, or schools. We had no clue about could we live on our money or not for a while. And then the first on the list was a person in Temne here in Fanad. And they said, friends who gave us his name and address said, but go there because he wants to be in Germany for Easter to visit his children. So we went to this place first, and he had a workman who asked us, what are you doing here? Because there was no tourist in Donegal at the time. And we said, we are looking for a house. And he said, what sort of a house? And I said, a chimney right, a chimney left, and the house in between. I didn't know the name of the word of cottage or anything. So he said, and a little farm around it with a few outhouses. And near the sea, but not too near. And he said, that's funny, my brother-in-law has such a house. Would you like to see it? And we said, yes. So he rang his brother-in-law, and we followed him in his car to come here. And this was it. It was completely run down. Nobody had been living here for years. And
no trees?
No, hardly any trees. There were probably 7 trees there, and they were moss-eaten and not taller than I was. And a few hedges, but you could go sideways with a tractor through the hedges. They were not kept. And we looked at it, and we could imagine how it would look if you look after it and renovate or prepare it. And so half an hour later, the farmer came, the owner, and we agreed on the price, and we agreed on that we could get 5 acres for that, including these buildings. And it was a Friday, and at the time the banks were hardly open. And we noticed, oh God, the banks are closed again, and we had no money. No money to go into bed and breakfast. That was the time before plastic money. And we only had something that was called Euro check. But not everybody in Ireland knew of it, and they didn't accept it very often. So I said to the farmer, oh, what can we do? And he immediately, he didn't even know us well at all. He gave us 100, at the time it was pound, to tide us over, and he had made already an appointment with a solicitor for Tuesday, so that we could buy the house in reality. And but I said, we have the camping gear in the car, little gas cooker, the air mattresses, and the sleeping bags. We could move in here over the weekend, and he gave us the key, and we moved in, and we are still sleeping in the same places. Yeah, that was lovely. And on the Tuesday we bought the farm, and on the Wednesday we were back in Germany to get the money. We had no money when we came here. We didn't intend to buy the farm right away.
Well, it was a bit of adventure
Okay.
That was true. But
but we had the vision that you can do something with it, you know. When we decided to go to Donegal, we met an Irish people in Germany and said, "Are you mad? Even the Irish people are freezing in Donegal."
yeah, they said, go anywhere in Ireland, but not to Donegal. That's the explanation. They are freezing at Donegal. We already had planted a few trees in Germany. We had to sell our little house and plot. And there were a few trees there that we had planted, and we were proud of that. And of course, we wanted our son to go to school here. And but planting of trees was quite clear that we would do that.
At that time, there was a scheme, you know, to plant broadleaf trees and get a grant for it.
But it was not a tree, not a plan to build a woodland. It was called shelter belt. Mm-hmm. You planted a row of several rows of trees, and that was that. And you got the grant you got was just the price of the trees, and you had to plant them yourself. And we did that because we couldn't buy. We had we had called the German embassy to see what is allowed to do in Ireland for a German person, and they said only 5 acres. So we bought only the 5 acres, and that wasn't enough to plant a woodland. But later on, the farmer came back, and I think he needed a new car or something. He didn't say, but he said he was ready to sell us more farmland, and we bought it. Each time he offered, we bought it, until in the end we had the whole farm, which was 27 acres of not very good land, but good enough for planting trees. And then we decided to plant a woodland, but by then there was a new grant available for woodland planting, and we did that. The grant came with conditions, of course, and we were not allowed to plant any trees which we wanted. We were allowed to plant 10% of trees of our choice or something. I forgot the conditions now, but anyway, we did it according to what they said. And we were not allowed to plant the trees, and so people had to plant trees. We asked around, and there were several firms like Chagask, what was the tree? Greenbelt, and the other one that planted all the sitkas in Ireland. Anyway, and we took one of the firms, Colcha, yeah. We took one of the firms and phoned them, and they said they would do it for us, and came to look at the size, and they said the fencing is on the states, and the trees, they will supply the trees, and we don't have to pay for them, and they supply the people who plant the trees. Except that was the first grant of that sort in Ireland, and you were not allowed to plant, say, your own trees. That we had hundreds of sycamore who had self-seeded, but we were not allowed to plant that. They had to come from a recognized, EU-recognized forestry or tree planting firm or whatnot. So we had to take what we got, which we did. And the tree planters came and had no clue of trees. They were Irish farm laborers, and they planted the trees as if they were giving potatoes. They didn't make space for the roots, or didn't firm the roots later on, or anything. That's what Wolfram did every evening when they were finished with their planting. But that, unfortunately, that year, that was 1990, what? 1995 or so. That year, after they planted them in November and December. And that spring was, I think, 5 months without a drop of rain. And the poor trees, luckily we had refused to put a weed killer on the ground. And we could see literally every day, every morning, how the dew went slowly down the little stems of the weeds into the soil again. And that was how our trees survived, because they would have died immediately because of dryness. It was quite dramatic to us. And but anyway, it worked out well in the end.
It took a couple of years before the trees were really established.
How big is the area that has been planted?
It was 7 acres, or was it 8 acres? 7, I think.
7.5, I think.
So how many trees are planted there? Do you have an idea?
Thousands, but no, not how many. So what do you
Okay.
think?
I think around 10,000 or
Yeah.
so.
10,000 trees.
Yeah.
Mm. When they are very young, you have to do a lot of work because the weeds that are growing, in our cases, would have been blackberries, brambles, and whin bushes, and they would destroy the young trees. Most of them would. But so we had to keep an area around each tree clear from the suffocating weeds. But that was Wolfram's work, and he worked very hard the first few years. And then when they were established and looking like trees already, that was a fine few years where you didn't have to do too much. Or what did you do then?
No, it's
But now it's more work because we have to cut, say, not literally, but almost every second tree down so that the next tree has more chances to grow. And that's hard work. And that's our timber for burning now.
well, they were quite skeptical. And
Yeah, one neighbor said, "You'll never grow a tree in Fanad."
a proper one.
Yeah, or an apple tree. So, and we enjoyed showing him. The neighbor's little grandson came along, and Wolfram was planting trees again. And he said, "Oh God, when I tell my grandfather about what you are doing, he won't believe me. He will ask me, what is Stumpf doing again? And I will answer, he'll be planting trees again, and he won't believe it."
Yeah, they thought it was a bit mad and a waste to build trees on all this grassland for grazing cattle.
And now?
He is dead now. But that farmer said to us, when we started, he said, "It's a great pity. We all worked in big teams together as neighbors to establish these fields with grass, and you are destroying them again with trees, and the trees will attract vermin." But vermin to him is all sorts of wildlife: crows, magpies, foxes, badgers, and everything. And we would attract them. That's what we wanted to do. So, but they were not. They were still very friendly to us, but they were thinking we were really mad.
You know, where we lived in Germany, it was like Netherlands, very
Flat.
flat, no hill, nothing. And so you had to get used to a completely different landscape here. It took some years, but then after a while I got used to it and appreciated it very much, for the scenery is very beautiful. That's really not a commercial woodland. It's more to embellish the whole place, and yes, it's more or less for the,
Very personal.
yeah,
I couldn't live without trees.
to do something for the environment. For it will attract birds and things and give shelter.
Insects.
Mm.
The love of trees is the most important quality in that. And of course we knew trees. We knew which trees we would like and which would grow here. The sort of trees.
Yeah, your mentality, and you have to believe that it's something really worth doing, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah, trees to me are very important to feel alive. And simply now, no leaves, nothing, and still the light through the trees is so different, as if there were no trees. And yes, and of course the bird life and the insect life, I enjoy that. And when I came here, I was missing the sound of the wind up in the trees. It's like the surf on the sea, and it wasn't there. And I wanted to hear birds singing from up in the trees, and that wasn't there either. So I really missed trees.
There are people who say the world can only be saved by planting more trees.
Yeah, I believe in that. Here around our farm.
Yes.
Much more woodland birds. But when we came, there were lapwings and there were skylarks, and they are not there anymore. But instead we have the other birds. And
Yes, some new species moved in.
yes, yeah, quite a few. Not rare birds, but still birds, and a lot of them, and singing ones. Yeah, when we came, for example, there were greenfinches, and they are completely gone. And that is not our fault, but they just didn't have their environment anymore. When we came, the farmers still had oat fields, and stacks with oat, and the birds that were dependent on such fields were gone completely. It was exactly what we see now, and that's what we hoped for.
Yes, and it's as well nearly like a miracle from remembering all these little trees, and now they are really big and strong. And in the beginning, when we told friends also that we started a woodland, and they came and saw all these little trees, what's that? That's no woodland.
The very
But
first.
now you can really see it's convincing.
Yes, I would say even if you only have one little bungalow and a tiny bit of an acre, to not take a wall around your piece of land, but put a hedge in, and in the corners of the hedge put little groups of trees, and that is already so wonderful. You see it with the old cottages; they always had some trees around them, the tiny cottages, and it makes them so nice. The climate is so much better with trees because they filter the wind, and you are definitely living in a nicer place right away. And they give you shelter, and in summer you have a warmer place because of the trees. And Ireland is very good for growing trees because it has this climate that we don't really like, the wet climate, but they love that wet climate, and they grow really with great glee. We have some Turkish oaks planted for curiosity's sake, and you think Turkish, they need the warmth. No, they need exactly the Irish. They are growing better than the Irish oaks. That's amazing. A great feeling of success.
Yeah, and you
Pride.
have to have patience, for it takes 40 years for an oak tree to grow little acorns. And trees are one of the strongest symbols of life.
The whisper of the river is calling out your name. It's telling you the story, but it doesn't sound the same. Your ancestors have warned you not to make those same mistakes. If we keep on taking without giving back, it breaks.